We've got a theme tune now. That was Andrew. Welcome you for this week's Hangout, where we are talking. That was well done, yeah. We're talking about music lessons and learning, and we thought actually that we'd make. We had a little pre-chat before we started this Hangout, and we're talking about how you learn in music lessons. And remember, in the actual course at the University of Chichester, the students have to make a curriculum for a year. So, and we're getting sort of near the end of term, so people are starting to put together their work and think about it. And it's a tricky sort of thing. But we were thinking about how music learning is actually different to other sorts of learning. So, how do you learn? Let's start with how do you learn in a class setting? And let's throw out some typical things that happen in a class setting. Go, Pete!
Keyboards is the first thing that comes to mind in a class setting. When I was in middle school, there was at everybody's desk there was like a keyboard, and we had like one between two or something. And I remember them teaching single note chords on the keyboard, and then you would like each play one bit and the other one would play the other bit, and then you'd kind of learn stuff like that. And then you'd learn like what crotchets are or quavers, or for the Americans that's what quarter notes and half notes and stuff like that. So you'd learn all the subdivisions of like beats and rhythm and timing, things like that. They're the kind of typical stuff that comes to mind. But then we do like group work sometimes on the floor, and you learn things like ostinatos, lots of different things like that. So that's when I think music in a class like school setting, that's kind of the thing that that comes to my mind at least. I don't know if is it the same for you, Andy? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. I think I got a few of those things in my school as well, but apart from that, it was stuff like Fruit Loops for group work and stuff like that, creating little...
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, we had a bit of that.
That sort of stuff. But a lot of it was, I think there was a lot of sort of music history and stuff like that. You have to know Mozart, you have to know who the other composers are. Yeah. That's not everyone wants to learn that, do they?
No, that's a great point. And some of the things that happen, whether it's a history sort of class or a keyboard class, one of the things that happen is everybody gets taken down or pulled along the same material, you know. And sometimes you have where this week class we're going to do this, and next week we're going to do that. And if you think about individual music lessons, that sometimes happens, and of course the teacher has to have an idea of what the structure is going to be, what you need to learn. The teacher always has to know what's coming next and sort of look beyond where the student can see. But it doesn't always have to follow the book, you know. And I think that's part of the magic of one-to-one lessons, whether they're called private lessons or not. And look, we've got Charlotte. That's super exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, Charlotte.
Hey.
Good to see you all.
Yeah, Charlotte, there's Pete and Andrew.
Hello.
And we were just talking, we were saying, because Charlotte is a, how would you describe yourself?
A pedagogue. I'm a micro publisher in the Boston, Massachusetts area in the U.S. And I run I'm the president of a nonprofit association of publishers in the New England area.
That is supremely cool. And,
ex-colonial.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll send you tea. It'll be okay.
Thank you.
No, but we were saying actually it's very interesting. You're incredibly interesting for today's discussion because in music learning there are some things that we do and are they're sort of automatic that perhaps are less common in other disciplines. So your opinion of what what we say is typical in a music lesson, how it sits with you will be really interesting. So I was just saying, in a music lesson, it's certainly not in the best lessons. It's not by the book. There's a lot of I think it's fair to say, Pete and Andy, you tell me, there's a lot of to and fro with the teacher where you might start off with something and perhaps the teacher has more of a, teacher always hopefully has a sort of vision where they can lead the student, but it depends, it might be completely thrown out the window depending on what that student brings to the table. And I think that's kind of a standard setup for music lessons where you know all the different components. It's like you've got a big kitchen with all the ingredients, but on any given day you know you're going to make a meal, but you don't know what it is or quite how you're going to do it. And I think
it's kind of a flow, or more of a coaching process, or?
I think so. What do you guys think, Pete? Andy?
I was thinking that in the class setting, everything seemed to be very sort of regimented and quite structured. But I've always found that, for me personally, one-to-one lessons sort of are a lot more different to that. They're almost the opposite. Like, they flow a lot better for me personally, which works better for me. But I don't know if that's the same for anybody else. That's just what I would think of when I compare classroom music learning to one-to-one learning. That's one of the main differences.
Yeah, I'd say the same with that. In my guitar lessons with my teacher, like, basically I come to him and he makes the lesson up on the spot, sort of thing. Every lesson.
I'm sure he actually knows what he's doing ahead of time, but it seems like he makes it up.
Yeah.
What about as the student? Do you feel that you are in a traditional role where you like, because we started the discussion saying in a classroom you're sort of in a desk, you do what you're told, and you don't, everybody's put through the same paces really. But so the question is, in the one-to-one setting, do you feel you have a say in what you're going to do? And how did you gain that say? Or do you not?
I definitely do in one-to-one setting feel like that, yeah. And I find that that's very important for me personally, because that's why I have to have a relationship with the teacher, like a good relationship, because otherwise I feel like that's really important to me, and if I don't have that relationship, I can't approach it in the same way, so I can't say to them, look, I feel like this would be better, or maybe I need to concentrate on this, etc., etc. Like that is why I think it's important.
Yeah, same.
Do you find that both methods are valuable for your music training or development?
Yeah, personally, I don't like the classroom setting as much, just because I'm not very good at like following orders and things like that. So that, for me, that doesn't work as well. But they are useful, because being told do this sometimes is what I need. So they are both valuable, but personally I prefer the one-to-one setting.
And I think that the higher you get, the fewer classroom settings you get, because people branch off and have their individual pursuits of what they want to become and what they want to learn and do. So I think that teachers respect that you are an individual as a musician, and nobody's trying to create a lot of likenesses, because that would be silly, I think.
I think the classroom setting works more when you're younger as well, because you're getting everybody to that same point. So there's almost like basics that everybody has to kind of cover to get to that spot. Whereas, like you said, you become more individual and you know your goals and what you want to achieve and things like that when you're older. So that's why one-to-one settings sometimes work better. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just thinking on the spot.
Andy, there's something I thought of that I was hoping you could mention in music learning, and this is, I think this might be different to business, but I don't know. We see our mistakes all the time in lessons. You come to lessons and you make mistakes. How can you talk about that? How's that feel?
Mistakes as in playing.
Yeah. Experiments.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Not sure how to word it. But it's just sort of performing for me is like whenever I'm playing in front of someone, it's sort of performing either way. So I want to try and do the best and make it sound the best. But it's awkward making mistakes either way, but it happens.
But in lessons,
Yeah.
not really mistakes, but there are things that you would do in lessons that aren't, they're not tested. That's what I mean by mistakes. It's like trying new things. And I think I think musicians do that without thinking about it. But on the external side, if you took somebody from another discipline, not music, and you said, well, I'd like you to try this out in front of me, then they might get a bit worried.
Yeah. Well, it's like improvisation. You need to just sort of sift through all the crap stuff and just get it until you get something good, I guess. Yeah, sort of thing. Which was,
What do you think, Pete? Do you do that with the teacher? Try new things in
Yeah,
front of them?
yeah, I do it in front of them. I think that leads back into why I think I need a good relationship with the teacher, because otherwise you could feel like really awkward or tense, or like, oh God, like what if they judge me or think that I'm an idiot or whatever, because I think a lot of the time I can, like, it's a part of me when I'm playing, so you view it quite sort of stringently, and you put a lot of pressure on it. So if the teacher's quite friendly, then you can feel at ease and you can actually perform or play in front of them, and you won't feel as judged. It's more like then they can offer you constructive criticism, and it doesn't feel like they're, ripping it out of you or laughing at you or whatever, which they should never do, obviously. But that's just the other side of it, isn't it?
Charlotte, does it work like that as an editor? Like when somebody publishes?
Well, there can be a lot of pushback depending on how attached the writer is to their material and the approach of the editor, of course. I think the best editors are, kind of merge into the energy of the writer and try and, direct them to make it more clear. Basically, an editor is there to make it more clear to the outside world what the writer is trying to say, so not trying to rephrase it for them. And I think, I see lots of parallels in music. And I personally like the sort of learning a little bit in a structured way and then going out and trying it and testing it. And I was wondering if the musicians like to have, or do you, when you're working with a teacher one-on-one, say, do you hear your own mistakes and just not know how to do it the way you want it, or do you not hear your mistakes, or is it both?
Is that for me or Andy or both, or?
I think. I think.
You go first, Andy. It's cool.
So I think sort of hear our mistakes sometimes, or not all the time as clearly as maybe the teacher knows how it should sound. Then they will pick it up on us. So if something's not as clean as it could be sounding, then they'll pick up on that and just tell us to slow it down or anything like that to try and get it clearer, or give us an exercise or anything like that to try and help us out, sort of thing, which is cool. Pete? Is he frozen?
Pete's frozen.
I think Pete's frozen. It's a tricky thing, though, that learning to hear your own mistakes takes it takes a willingness, because you have to be willing to know that you can improve, but you also have to be willing to hear what you sound like. And when Pete earlier said it's part of himself, with music there's a tricky separation. I suppose it's depending on what kind of things people are writing. I mean, with many things, you put a lot of your own energy and effort into what you do, and then if it's not quite right, you have to be almost ready to receive that and grow on it. So it is tricky, but when you do learn to hear things and then to understand that it might be a wrong rhythm, perhaps you're trying to recreate something that is written by a composer and you've done a different rhythm, and that's not a comment on your person. It's not saying I'm a bad person. It's saying actually I didn't play in time in that instance.
And I think when the editor puts themselves in the position of the person reading it and saying, if I were just reading this and didn't know everything that you know, this is how I would interpret it. Is that what you want me to? Is that how you want me to interpret it, or have you considered expressing it two different ways, something like that? But the willingness is definitely there. It has to be there. It has to be there. The humility, really, the humbleness to accept direction.
Yeah. It's the same with. I'd say it's the same with when you're writing stuff and writing music as well. Especially if you're in a group setting, and you have to hear other people's ideas and whether they like it or not, or whether they think they could do it better or differently. Something like that. Oh, what were you saying, Laura?
Oh, I've forgotten because I thought that was a good idea. Because see, Andy also plays in a band, so when they're writing songs together, there are different levels of that sort of give and take. You, like you said, Andy, you have to hear what the other people's suggestions are, be aware of them, open to them, see how does it contribute to what you're making. But then there's also the how will this be received by the listener? Is it not appropriate's the wrong word, but is it gonna suit the venue or the occasion or whatever it is that you're doing?
Yeah, those three things. Then there's the musician. You as an individual musician, the band, the group of peers, and then the audience that you're trying to communicate to. And I remember in the '80s there was like this band in Seattle that it was called White House, and I went down to some club called the Love Canal, I think it was, and I walked in there. It was like nasty. It was like a dump of sound. Just like, what the fuck were they trying to say? Like what? But I do remember them to this day. So I think my ears were bleeding or something. It had nothing to do with music. Nothing to do with music. It's like, oh my god. But yeah, so there was a overemphasis on the individual musician there.
Yeah.
So okay, I've got a reverse question. So we've had, do you hear your mistakes? Do you hear your successes? Do you hear your achievements?
Yes.
And this is both for the writer and the musician. So Andy, go on.
Yeah, especially when you're working on a part that you've been trying to do for hours and hours on end, and you finally get it to a good level, then you just about get it. It's like, yes, finally. And that level is just you finally freaking got something or got where you want to go. Then,
and is it more rewarding when other people notice? So Peter was saying, if you turn on your chat, you'll see all these things to catch you up.
Yeah. I was practicing downstairs in my living room or lounge or whatever yesterday. So my other housemate was just chilling in there with me, so he was giving me compliments when I actually did it right and stuff like that. It was good. It's good little hearing feedback and stuff like that.
Feedback's really important. And it's a funny thing because one musician to another, sometimes we don't, unless we're in that teaching setting or performance setting, we don't often say, oh, that sounded good, or whatever particular thing, you had a nice tone. Oh, I like that. And it's very valuable to, it's validating for people, and it's encouraging, because on the path it's a sort of long road.
Yeah. Yeah, especially compliments can help a hell of a lot, especially when someone's just trying to find something that sounds good, especially in writing sort of thing. Like the other day when I was writing with our drummer in the band and stuff like that, I was trying to play a chorus line to him that I'd made up so he could figure out a drum beat to go along with it. It took him a few seconds, just like, okay, yeah, and then just started doing it. It was like, just came up with amazing drum beaters.
So I can ask you a question. We got asked a request from Twitter. A load of people who are involved in the Digital Writing Month, and somebody from France and somebody from Egypt, somebody from America, and they wrote a 6-word poem. And Andy came up with the guitar line. They said, "Can you put some music to this?" And so, can you tell us how you came up with your guitar line?
Well, I'd already figured. What was it? I think there's some of the things I'd already been messing around with in the tuning I was with. So I had a starting thing for it.
So wait, I understand what you mean, but other people watching aren't going to understand. So there's a song that you're learning that requires you to change the tuning of the guitar, and so as a learning strategy, and you did it naturally and didn't put those fancy words on it, but you've been improvising and writing pieces in that using that tuning to get really fluid, so that when you master the piece, it's all good.
Yeah.
So that's
it's nice to know what notes work within the tuning. So basically, I've been messing around with it, and the start of it, I sort of discovered and came up with that sounded nice. So I had a basis of what to work on. So the night before, it was a couple of nights before coming into the lecture, I thought I'd sit down and actually record that. Then in the morning before the lecture, I was like, okay, let's continue this. I've got this idea, so this works with this. So I sort of put it together, 3 parts together, and started just sort of melding them together. A lot of it's to do with, I think, just listening to it and listening to sort of things, and then it sort of working in your head, I guess. So you hear what sounds good and sort of go along with it, sort of thing.
But then it took some guts to bring that to the class, and you just played it for the class, and then we put it together and sent it online to these people, and then they said, like, that was really nice. I really liked the thoughtful atmospheric sounds and how they relate to the text they'd come up with. So that was a positive thing.
You guys are in a group class, live class as well as this, or?
Yes. Yeah, we've got a live class. Yeah, you missed the very beginning. We've got a live class, and these guys are designing a 1-year curriculum for a music student. They get to choose whatever student of their choice. And so we meet weekly for a couple of hours, and then we do a hangout and invite other people in and talk about the week. And we never really know what's going to happen. Pete's apologized because his borrowed a laptop this week, and it's dying.
Oh.
Sometimes if you turn off your video, it can improve if it's a bandwidth issue, but I don't know if it's a bandwidth issue.
Yeah.
Well, this is a really cool idea. I mean, this is a great idea for developing a curriculum.
And it gives, the thing is, as a music teacher, you need to interact with other people. You need to talk. You need to be able to sound off of people, and so it's a little bit as well as of a experiment. We're developing different skills, digital skills, because people teach Skype lessons too now, lots of them, and that is. It's funny because we're live and we get to see each other react, but you're not so live that you can feel each other breathing on you,
I'm not sure how a Skype lesson would be. I don't know. It could be alright. It might be a little limiting when you can't see what they're doing 100%. If it's
like if you can't see the face and the instrument.
You have
maybe a harmonica could work.
No, it's true. You have to be working on certain things because, as you're right, you can't see everything. Yeah. And with some instruments, you can't see a lot of things that people do. It's funny. I was talking to.
Go ahead.
I'll say a quick one. I was talking to a trumpet player, and they do a lot of things inside their mouth with where they put their tongue to shape sounds, and you can't. There's no way you could see that, and you wouldn't. It'd be really rude if you just looked into in the mouths. You would say, "Go away! What are you doing?"
Right.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, I was just experimenting with Howard Rangel one time. You know, he was trying to learn soldering or something, and well, I had this little microphone camera, USB camera, and then this camera. So the microphone was, I mean, you could switch them back and forth. You can't have them both on at the same time except in certain programs, but you could switch it back and forth. So when you're soldering, it would be down, you know, like on your workplace, and then you would switch it back to the camera when you wanted to talk or something. So there might be some technologies that would help that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, there's actually little cameras that can go on the end, the head of your guitar, just the top bit here. Just look down on the fretboard, which is that'd be awesome. That'd be helpful.
Yeah, I've seen those. I don't know in what context it was. Maybe a concert video or something.
People do that to make it look really, you know, great angles of things. But there's a website called, if you Google Dave's Conservatoire, he's put together hundreds and thousands of videos of lessons that are supposed to be, they're all free to access. I don't know how good they all are, because obviously I haven't seen them all. But the idea is really good. And there's a guitar teacher in Canada who does online lessons. And actually, something that is quite a fun one, but you need to make sure it's appropriate for the student, is like this. You know, have you send each other audio files or a little video file, or you have a momentary Skype checkup on how's it going in the week. Because one of the trickiest things with learning music lessons is the amount of time you spend with the teacher, and it might be a half hour, it might be an hour per week, and then all the rest of the week you're on your own.
The main thing is prove on your own time when you practice. You learn what you need to learn in the lesson and practice it to perfect it for next week on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I've found that with the editing and the Pedagogy project especially, just having this kind of regular stream to check in with people might not be the same configuration of people every time, but usually it's pretty consistent. But and then I've been trying to do that with our publishing organization, where we have a daily sort of drop in and call it a coffee break, and we don't know what we're going to talk about. We just, like this morning we had one talked about putting together communities for critique and book critique and publishing process. So, you know, we kind of explored around, did some screen shares. I think people really got a lot out of it, and those are not recorded. They're not hangouts on air, but you get a different angle when people are not being recorded. You know, you just they don't feel like they have to be so coherent or
so amazing or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's another thing like that at I don't know if they still do it, but Cambridge at the university in the astronomy department. My husband was there for a while, and they had a I don't know if it had to be weekly, but it was like a tea, and everybody went to the staff common room or some room, and they all had tea, from the Astronomer Royal down, all the professors and the students, and they all would talk to each other and just meet up, and so you could go talk to Stephen Hawking, and you think like, wow, you're really famous, and he would talk to you, and you'd be having those cups of tea.
And he'd say, yeah, you're really new.
Yeah, but it's that sort of the freedom to interact in a sort of public-private, but you know.
Yeah.
It's
they
useful.
do that at my son's at Vassar, and they do that President's Tea or something like that, I think, every Sunday. She lives right on campus. But yeah, that helps.
It does help.
And I'm trying to figure out, you know, if that's where we're going with these online communities that we're building. You know, are we? Because we can't all move to Boston to be in a publishing group that meets in real time. We're creating these communities of levels across the globe, really, Yeah.
I think you're right, but there are different levels, so it doesn't replace the. If I got to Boston, it would never replace us having a real cup of tea
No.
together.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fabulous, and it has been with Piragachi when I traveled to the UK and met with Joe, and then Charlie went to Mexico City and met with Paula. And,
We have some visitors, and I don't know who they are.
oh.
But we're nearly done.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Sen sıkıntısın değil mi? I'm sorry. Hello guys.
What are you?
Who I am? It's a really nice question. I'm Jesus. And
Right. There you go. Well, we're past our time, so we might wrap it up. But if you guys are musicians, welcome, or talking about music, so maybe we'll see them another time. But in the meantime, the rest of us, we can carry on our discussion elsewhere, and thank you for joining us. Next week we have Alan Levine joining us as guest. And
Nice.
yeah. And maybe we'll see Charlotte again, who knows. So
Oh
thank you
yeah,
very
please
much.
remind me of the
I will.
the link.
I
Okay.
will.
See you
So
soon.
thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.